bit of clarification from my lovely introduction. Yes, and yes, I am English and New Zealand. I'm delighted to have dual citizenship, and with our impending royal visit, which hopefully won't be stormy and in a small boat, it's quite an honour to have been born in the same hospital as the youngest heir in line to the throne. I was in the public wing. And also, gosh, it must be 2007 since I was about last time member of the Green Party. Very sympathetic to their principles, but definitely independent and accountable to the people of Wellington rather than through a particular party. So, so it's great when an introduction gives you something to say. So thank you very much, Steve. I think the sergeant will be coming down upon you shortly. And it's really nice to be back here. Last time I was speaking here, of course, with a number of us who were the contenders for the position, and you know, lots of people have got some good ideas for Wellington, and I hope that we'll be able to draw on the best of a whole range of different ideas. And it's a pretty big vision for Wellington, the whole idea of smart capital, but I thought, given we've got 15 minutes, not 15 hours, I was going to focus on three of those biggest strengths. The high-tech area, tertiary education. It's a pleasure to see you here, Pat. I don't know if you're feeling more relaxed now. And also our general livability and how important it is to our success. So, and I'd like to leave a little bit of room for questions, if that will fit in. So anything that I haven't said, ask me about, as long as it's nothing to do with your parking tickets. So our focus is very much on where we've got world-class advantages, and some of the projects that I'll discuss include the Film Museum, which reflects our strengths in the digital, high-tech and creative sector, the runway extension, building on our connectivity and the need for New Zealand and Wellington to have a very international focus, and some of the projects that are enhancing our livability, so we maintain our position, as Sir Paul Callaghan said, as a city where talent wants to live. But let's also look at the wider context, the changing context of the world as a whole. Now, we've got some nice pictures here, and now do have another cup of coffee, do not snooze. They are just pictures to remind you about what a superb place Wellington is. Mostly, though not all, taken when it's sunny and calm on a typical Wellington day. It is quite important that we think about the transformation in our economic growth in terms of both being able to achieve lasting economic growth, but also aligning it in terms of economic growth and social inclusion. And there are a number of really interesting businesses in Wellington, good businesses doing good things for social or environmental or health issues. You think of some of the work that the Malaghan Institute is doing in trying to solve some of the issues of cancer, looking at the immunotherapy work that they're doing. That's quite extraordinary work. And it's also good business to meet those challenges of our changing world, and increasingly the huge threat of climate change. There's very few deniers that humans and the way we've been running the world for the last, well, probably since Bonnie Prince Charlie drank himself to death in Rome, I should say. Some of the consequences, not intentional consequences, but some of the consequences of how we've actually been running things, burning things, and so on. But we are starting in, I think, the most wonderful place. And I think if you're going to say, what's the best thing that happened to me in the lottery of life? It was 8th of August 1983, landing in Wellington, and then having the opportunity to stay here. But I couldn't have done that without a good job. So Wellington is a place where there are good jobs, there's an extraordinary cultural buzz, and a beautiful environment on land and sea. We've just been looking at some of the figures for GDP for the city, not just the region. The city's GDP is 2.6%, pretty much the same as the country as a whole. Population growth has been 1% per annum for the last 10 years, and our carbon emissions are going down. not dramatically, but somewhat. So beginning to decouple those things. I firmly believe we can have quite a lot more people living in Wellington, and many of them are choosing to live in downtown Wellington. Now there are, if you look at how the population is being distributed, the new population, the new buildings, the new household units, somewhere around 40% downtown. And that's why it's such a walkable, one of the reasons why it's such a walkable city. So my vision, and it's very much shared across the council, is of a progressive, creative and prosperous smart capital. Now for quite a while we didn't talk about capital because it sounded like we might be looking like Canberra, which is possibly not the most exciting city in the world. I'd like to acknowledge the work that previous councils have done, and it's good to have Kerry here today. Some of the issues about focusing on our democracy, and a lot of that will come to fruition next year as it's the 150th anniversary of being the capital city. So working with the Speaker of the House and on that area around the cenotaph and getting some improvements there. Hopefully they're going to pay something towards them, that'd be even better. We also looking at cities around the world, because you have the people that we would like to have here, whether they were born here, whether they're your children, nieces, nephews, or whether they're new people from elsewhere in the world. If they want to live here, they will be comparing Wellington to other cities, and other cities have got really good transport choices. And October 2013, gosh, it seems ages ago already, there was quite a big change. There were 6 new councillors out of 15. That changes the dynamics a lot. And we've got one of the youngest councillor is the deputy mayor. So I benefited from Ian McKinnon's knowledge of protocol and connections in the first term, and now we've got the youngest councillor being the deputy mayor, Justin Lester from the Northern Ward. But there is a very common focus. You've got Nicola Young, who is one of my more elegant opponents, and she's a downtown city liver who, last time we were talking about Taranaki Street, said, why isn't there better cycling provision? So now you've got people coming from a range of theoretically different political backgrounds, but coming to an understanding of what a modern, progressive, successful city is like. And we've already made some significant changes to be more responsive and more open for business. And there's a really common understanding, again, whatever label people wear, that we need to increase the commercial rating base, which has been flat since I think about 2006. And if you know, Northern England may have its charms, but if you look at some of those cities where they're emptying out, they've got population decrease, they've got rating base decrease, it's not a pretty sight. It doesn't look after their leisure centres, it doesn't look after their parks, it doesn't look at cleaning up their rivers. So it's a very good common understanding that we need to increase the rating base. And there's been, I'll give you some example of some of the activity that's been done. And you know, a lot of it builds on whether it's the previous 3 years or earlier. And so things don't happen overnight, but they are happening. For example, we've actually said, if you're a developer building something new, we won't take your development contribution until it's either occupied or sold. So that's a much more helpful incentive to getting things built. We're also consulting on halving those development contributions if it's a Green Star building, whether it's an office or whether it's mixed use with more than 10 household units. We're also working, you won't see a lot about happiness and friendliness breaks out amongst regions' mayors. You know, that's just not the preferred Dominion Post headline. But we have agreed in principle shared services in water and IT, and you'll have seen the Regional Council is consulting on bringing the bulk water in with the delivery of the retail sector. We've also heard some of the submissions on the Kumatoto building down on the waterfront. And there's mixed views. There's all, I mean, Wellington is a healthy democracy with a range of views, but I think the Kumatoto building as proposed now is a huge improvement on just a rather rectangular box, and will leave plenty of room for walking, cycling and enjoying the waterfront, and preserve the view shafts through. So we'll see whether that's a conclusion that people come to, but I think it will be. We were also first to agree our draft budget in December, and that includes keeping the rates to local government inflation. But beyond just the tweaks in the annual plan, which is, after all, it's the third year of the budget with a few modifications, we've been working on a package of 8 big ideas. Now, those of you that know Wellington well will know that ideas like a film museum or a runway extension are not utterly new. But somehow they haven't got out as a package as effectively as they might do. So it's been a pleasure to work with Dr. Kevin Lavery, and perhaps it's his fresh ideas having come over from what my husband very rudely calls Pomgolia more recently, that's enabled him to say, well, these are the ideas that we should push forward on. Again, they will all need their business cases, they will all need their funding and so on. And sometimes people forget to say that they're dependent on those contingencies. Those projects will build on our strengths and ensure that we remain competitive. They enhance Wellington's quality of life and will attract the talent we need to take our economy forward. So if you think about the film museum, one of our strengths is in high tech and film. We're going to see a world-class interactive museum with some famous props, and of course that puts us on the world stage. And it's not, it's wonderful to have Sir Richard Taylor and Sir Peter Jackson here, but it's not only them that contribute to this huge success. People love the Weta Workshop and then the Weta Cave. This is going to be an order of magnitude greater and more exciting. It'll be a window on some of Wellingtonians' most talented people. And I have to say that the recent government incentives, I don't agree with everything the government says or does, but this was very helpful for Wellington in particular, those incentives, not just for feature films, but also for TV production, which takes some of the roller coaster nature out of the employment in that sector, are very welcome, and according to my sources, the phone calls have been ramping up. Again, on the tech centre, we've done Wellington's done really well in the Deloitte Technology Fast 500 Asia Pacific Index, and 16 Wellington businesses made it into that index. Compare that to 15 from the whole of Auckland, 6 from Christchurch, and 1 business each from some of the other regions. If you think about the scaffolding up at the seaward end of Taranaki Street, much of that is directly occasioned by the growth of Zero. But those people, they can grow some talent here. I'm very enthusiastic about Dev Academy helping transfer skills to do software development to people who haven't got those skills at the moment. They may be graduates in something else, whether it's arts or commerce or whatever. But we also need to bring more people here. So I'm delighted that Grow Wellington, our economic development agency, is in Austin, Texas at the moment at one of the biggest software showcases to try and tell people what a wonderful tech centre Wellington is. And that is a mixture. We've got to welcome new people while growing our own as well. And one of the things that's going to make Wellington more attractive is, of course, the international airport extension. And just this morning I was out at Wellington Airport to greet the ANA Boeing 777. And of course it wasn't fully laden, otherwise it wouldn't be taking off again from Wellington. But it was amazing, I've just dwarfed everything else on the runway, which is most satisfactory. But what we need is the runway extension so that we can have 777s taking off fully laden on a commercially viable basis. The long haul market is currently over 9,000 passengers a week and growing. And that current demand doesn't include additional passenger growth that you would see from having those direct services. We put in some money for the initial resource consent application. Looks like it has significant city, regional and national benefit, and that's great because that means it could be a project of national significance. I'm now on the airport board, and I can assure you we're working with partners, private and public, various airlines, to bring direct long-haul flights to Wellington, and looking at different projects to see how we can minimise the costs of the engineering and also make it as sensitive as we can to the important marine environment. So we're working up that business case. There's a few people that think that central government's never going to put any money in, or the region's never going to put any money in. I assure you, when they see the business case, I think they will be convinced. So one of the fun things that I've been involved in the last week or so is doing an interview and then some photo shoots with Wall Street Journal. And Wall Street Journal is not going to have just one, but 2 articles about Wellington. One is going to be about our extraordinary success as a tech centre. Why have we got such growing high-tech companies here? And the other one was just a quirky little piece they wanted to do about my fitness regime. Hopefully they weren't here photographing the chocolate mousse for that one. But what I did was I chose some things that I thought showcased Wellington in a really good light. One was the kayaking, so they were down at 6:45 in the morning taking pictures. I said, you've got to do it before the cyclone hits. So they were down at Island Bay Beach taking pictures there. But you know, what other capital city has got a marine reserve right on its doorstep? And the other one was, of course I do cycle around, I do use the electric assist a little more than is best for the waistline, but you know, it gets me slightly less ruffled on arrival. And I thought, I don't want another picture out in the suburbs, however lovely they are, so we got that outside the Lido, where you've got a bit of high rise. It feels like a city. In fact, it feels like the best of European cities in some ways, with those trees and the cafe seats outside the Lido. So hopefully they'll choose some of the best of those pictures and promote us. But one of the things with the Wall Street Journal, and talking about why we're a good high-tech centre, is the quality of our tertiary education. Think of both Massey and Victoria as universities, but also the quality of technical education from Welltech and Fitterea contributes at a whole different series of levels. Now, we have been promoting international education here for a while. I think I did a welcome to several hundred students, secondary and tertiary, recently, but what we want to do is move up the value chain. We want more of a focus on research, PhDs, and that kind of success will attract students. Farewell to Pat, and welcome to Grant Guilford. And I was impressed by his starting off speech, talking very much about the capital as a thought centre, focused on governance and research, business excellence, but also talking about sustainability and ecology. And it's a pleasure to be working with a number of people at Victoria about a centre of research excellence in urban ecology. And whether or not that gets immediate funding from central government, it's still a really good idea. If you think about Zealandia, the marine reserves, Otari, and the wonderful work that's done by many of you and other volunteers in Wellington, we are one of the cities worldwide most connected to nature. And that's worth a lot. It's worth a lot for intrinsic value, but it's worth a lot for the biodiversity itself, but it's also about research and about making Wellington a place where talent wants to live. Another centre of excellence was opened very recently. It's the International Centre of Excellence in Community Resilience. And for some reason that hasn't really made many ripples in the media recently, but it's quite an important initiative. It's a joint initiative between Massey University, GNS Science and the Wellington Region Emergency Management Office. And bringing together the science, experience and learnings into one shared hub, we can really lift the resilience of the Greater Wellington region, prepare communities better, but also attract international research, grants, scholarships, students and so on. I said, might not have been the most welcoming phrase, but I did say, we're not, as far as disasters go, Wellington's not a one-trick pony. Now we can do earthquakes, we can do tsunami, we can do cyclones, just about, and a number of other things. So, and landslips. I'm sure you can all think of a few more that we could do. And it's really interesting to see we're the most well-prepared community, and as well as the investment in the physical infrastructure, there's been a huge investment in getting communities to look after themselves. On that little thing on the water bottle that you keep at home, it says you may be alone for 3 days. Well, there's moments in this job where I think, oh yes, I could be alone for 3 days. No, just occasionally it feels like a good thing. But you won't be. You'll be next to your neighbours or the neighbouring business or somebody else. So it's about getting to know your neighbours, and I think Wellington has done an extraordinary job of promoting community resilience. So we might as well get some kudos for it. So just winding up with the idea of keeping our strengths as a livable city. We won in 2012 the LivCom Awards, ahead of Siena in Italy in the size category. It's not bad, is it? We're up from 13th in the world to 12 in the latest Mercer one, and I'm sure Auckland's only at number 3 because it's got a decent airport. But it is about continually promoting Wellington. As a city, we under-promise and over-deliver. Anyone that's come here for work, not really knowing what the city was like, most people absolutely love it and want to stay here. But they said, I didn't know what it was like beforehand. So there's a lot of work going on with Positively Wellington Tourism and Grow Wellington, and anybody that we can make an ambassador for Wellington to promote the city. And I'd like to finish off by saying livability is about including people, so all of the work on social housing, warrants of fitness and all that's really important. But it's also about participation and enjoyment of the arts, both participation and enjoyment. So I'd like to echo those thanks that you made, Roger, about the extraordinary 2014 New Zealand Festival. We've got Sue Patterson here, we've got Kerry Prendergast, who's the Executive Director. It's been a huge team of the performers, the organisers, the venues. I did say to them, I'm amazed that you're not actually having a 24-hour sleep now that the festival's finished, but no, they're probably ready organising the next one, I should think, making sure that anyone that didn't sponsor it this time isn't a patron this time. You've got another opportunity coming up. So thank you for asking me to speak. You can see I'm passionate about this city, passionate about promoting it, but only by making partnerships with business, with tertiaries, and with all the individuals with good ideas can we actually make Wellington reach its potential together. Thank you.